Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillahi amma ba'd. We've reached the fifth point with regards to memorizing. On page 25, the author says, Tajzi'atul mahfuz. He says, separating and splitting up or dividing the things that you wish to memorize. Splicing them, cutting them up. وهذا يعود لما سبق الكلام عنه جزء المتن إذا كان طويلا بل حتى لو كان المتن قصيرا جزئه حتى يكون الحفظ أثبت وأرسخ. He says we previously spoke on this, and if the book that you're trying to memorize, the metin, the small metin, al-Aqidah al-Wasatiyya, Kitab al-Tawheed, Umdat al-Ahkam, Naam, whatever the metin may be, he says if it's long, then break it down. Split it up. He says even if it's not that long, you should still split it up. For the purpose of your hifd being stronger, the purpose of your hifd being more powerful, being firm, being more, having more firmness, firmly rooted and grounded in your mind. فمثلا إذا أردت أن تحفظ متنا في الفقه ثم رأيت أن المؤلف قد جعل للطهارة 4 أسطر وجعل للصلاة 10 أسطر فابدأ بتجزية هذا المحفوظ ف4 أسطر في الطهارة قد تسهل عليك لكن المؤلف قد جعل للصلاة 10 أسطر وحفظها كاملة قد يشق عليك إذن فعليك أن تجزئها ولا تقل سأحفظ فصلا كاملا فقد يكون هذا الفصل الطويل لا يتيسر لك حفظه كما تيسر الذي قبله. المهم أنك كلما جزأت الحفظ كان ذلك أرسخ ولا تقول سأتأخر في الحفظ فالتأخر مع رسوخ الحفظ أفضل من التعجل مع عدم رسوخ الحفظ ومن ثم تفلت الحفظ. The author says, for example, there is a book in which the author of the book has different sections about salah, about tahara, about fiqh, a fiqh metin. So he says, let's say for example there are 4 lines on tahara and 10 lines on salah. He says then start off by breaking it down. The 4 lines on tahara could be easy, but the 10 lines on the salah could be a bit difficult. He says so break it down. And don't say, well, I want to just memorize it all at once, it's easy for me, so on and so forth. Alright, he says rather make it easy for yourself and break it down, the way you can be stronger. And don't say that it's going to take longer, it's going to take a longer time, a line a day, half a page a day, it's going to take longer. He says because, listen carefully to the golden principle, this is a major fact for Tulab al-Ilm. He says it's better to take your time and to be slower in memorizing with stronger hifd than rushing, finishing quickly, and having a weaker hifd. In other words, you do a page a day and you fly through it. He says, but then later on it's tafallut. The hifd that you have goes away and it's really not that strong anymore. You think that you got it, but then it's sloppy, it's choppy, you're breaking it up, you're having a hard time remembering it. A month goes by, 2 months go by, a year go by, a year it goes by, and then you don't have it anymore. He says that's no good. Whereas it's best to take your time and to move slowly, but strongly. We mentioned this in the last class with regards to the tortoise and the hare. It's best to start the race slow, but end the race, finish it. Then to just start off with a burst and to dash, but then become fatigued and exhausted. So the example of the 4 lines and the 10 lines, that was nothing more than an example. Obviously, 4 lines and 10 lines is not a real big, huge challenge for somebody that's an actual student of knowledge. A green beginner, that's a different story. Okay, but it's just an example that he's mentioning. It could be 10 lines, it could be 10 pages, whatever the case may be. What's important is slow and steady wins the race. So if you have the talent to just fly through it and cut through it like a knife through cheese, then that's a different story. But everyone doesn't have that ability, especially those who begin and they start off. Now, once more, this is a book that's written by a scholar from the Middle East, okay? And the people in the Middle East are not perfect. They have their issues. The Muslims there are human beings as well. All right, there are people who don't pray, who drink alcohol. They have problems too. However, it's a bit different from the people in the West from certain aspects. Whereas many students of knowledge today are revert Muslims. They come from Jahiliyyah. Many Muslims today or students of knowledge, even if they were born and raised Muslims, they never studied anything, or they only studied secular things, or they did drugs heavily, they smoked heavily. Many brothers and sisters who accept Islam, or they were born and raised Muslim and they become students of knowledge and da'iyas, it's unfortunate many of them were addicted to pornography. Okay, many of them had boyfriends and girlfriends in which they made a zina, and they smoked and they drank a lot. All right. There's some of us, we accept Islam or we raise Muslim, we start seeking knowledge, and our brain cells are burnt. We've lost brain cells smoking drugs, drinking alcohol. All right, this is reality. Hours and hours and hours and hours of video games and this and that and music and whatever the case may be. So oftentimes, people, they come from a culture that does not, or that it isn't inducive. This culture doesn't support and help studying, let alone when you go even deeper, the concept of memorizing. Whereas someone who's from the Middle East, he may not come from a studious background, or he may have been a Christian, or maybe a Hindu. It comes from India. But in India or Saudi or this part of Africa, it's the tradition to memorize more. It's standard to memorize. Everyone doesn't have the latest smartphone, and there aren't necessarily addresses for every single house and store and location. But memory is a staple part of the culture. So when he comes to studying, he comes to Islam, he comes to memorizing and reading, it's relatively easier for him to memorize. It's not as difficult. Where someone who comes from a culture in which everything is written down. In America, say, what's your phone number? Give me your phone number. What's the address? Text me the address. Everything is written down. GPS, use your GPS to drive around. And the people who memorize everything by heart is relatively rare. It's relatively scarce. It's not the same. They call them old-fashioned people. Everybody understand this? And we don't have to quote any famous cliches or lines of poetry or different scenes from famous movies and things like this, in which the person's skill and the person's edge above his enemy or the police was memory and not getting caught with a piece of paper. That's not the norm, but it may be the norm in Mauritania. It may be the norm in Saudi Arabia, even for someone that's not that religious. Okay? So you have to take this, you have to keep this in mind. Now you have to train yourself to get into the mode of memory. Now, when you go to college overseas, you study in Islamic University of Medina, a big part of it, not all of it, but a big part of it is memory. And a lot of the test is a test on your memory. And the teacher tells you to write down the hadiths, quote them from your head, the explanations, what does Shafi'i say, what's the view on this, why is this hadith da'if, so on and so on and so forth, what's the correct view according to your opinion with the proof. You have to write. And there aren't too many exams in which you're going to just, it's going to be, whatever, open-ended, or a lot of things are not based off of mathematical equations. A lot of things are not based off of different opinions. A lot of things are not based off of long, extensive type writing things, but it's based off of the hadith. You write a lot based off of the hadith. So many people, they criticize the different universities overseas and the programs and the curriculums, and they say, it just deals with memorization, and not so much with actual writing, with actual analysis, and so on and so forth. There is writing, there is analysis, there is explanations that you have to prove, there is aql, there's intellect and wit that you need. But a big part of it is memory, especially in the college of hadith. So when we talk to certain students who went to colleges in America and had certain degrees, they were in Medina, they found it difficult. Like how can you do this? I have a degree in biology, and this is College of Hadith is more difficult than biology. I thought it'd be easier because it's Islamic stuff. I thought it'd be simple, but it's not that simple, because this person who has a degree in biology, with all of the different pieces of information in his head and the terms and the Latin and this word and that word, it's not the same as just pure raw memory. And that is why it's just something that Allah Azza wa Jalla, He blessed the Muslims with in general, and He also blessed the Arabs with specifically. And this is one of the wisdoms of Allah Azza wa Jalla choosing Muhammad, the last prophet and messenger, to come from the Arabs. All right, to come from them. There are other wisdoms as well. Allah Azza wa Jalla knows, alayhi sallahu bi'alama bishakirin. As the Quraysh, they says, aha'ulai, did Allah manna Allah alayhim? Allah bless these people, min baynina, from among us, this Fulan and this slave and this Persian and this one and this one and that one, and we are the heads of Quraysh, and He chose these people to be the followers of Muhammad. This is what they said. And Allah says, doesn't Allah know those who are thankful and those who deserve His guidance? Okay, وَأَعْلَمُ بِالْمُهْتَدِينَ. Allah says another ayah, and Allah knows more of those who are guided, those who deserve to be guided and should be guided. However, from the reasons why He chose them, because one may say, okay, they killed each other, okay, they had severe barbarism, quaintness, they murdered each other, they drank alcohol, they buried their daughters alive. Why did Allah choose them to be the bearers of His final message and not to be the cradle of His final message? From the wisdoms is that the Arabs had an extreme ability to memorize. They knew things. They couldn't read, they couldn't write, but He can tell you his father, grandfather, great-great-great-great-grandfather. They tell you the lineages of their camels, of their horses, the battles, the dates, the places. Kullu shay, by memory. And He can't even write his name on a piece of paper. So the hifd is a standard mark of the Muslims. And it's also a standard mark of the Arabs and other countries and cultures as well. But we're talking about the Arabs right now. So therefore, you may come from a civilization or culture in which memory is not the main tool. It's not, anyone who memorizes a lot is considered to be a genius. And overseas, it's normal. All right. We met different people from different countries, and brothers will say in Mauritania, a cab driver driving down the street has memorized more than some students of knowledge. And he's a cab driver. He's not a student. He's not no, super scholar type person. He's just a cab driver. But because they memorize so much, there's no electricity. Things are all rural. They memorize. So the point is that oftentimes many people, when they go overseas or when they start studying Islam, they fall into a culture shock. All right? They become shell-shocked. And their mouths, we've seen it. Brothers' mouths literally just open up and drop and hit the floor like, what? Oh my God, I have to memorize this to pass this class? Yeah. You got to memorize all of these hadiths and these names and these dates and these narrators and what Ibn Hazm said and Fulan. You have to memorize it by heart. And they find it difficult. All right? So you have to start yourself off bid'nillahi ta'ala in slow, basic paces. Now, and for you to fly through the memorization but it becoming weaker later on is not as beneficial as you taking your time, locking it down. Then bid'nillahi ta'ala, it won't go away and it'll stay with you. Point number 6, the author says, وَاحِدِ النُّسْخَةَ الَّتِي تَحْفَظُ مِنْهَا. He says that if you're going to memorize a book, then you should have only one book that you read and memorize from. One copy of the book. Don't read from different copies of the book. You memorize an al-Aqidah al-Wasitiyah, then only have one metin of al-Aqidah al-Wasitiyah. Not one day on a computer, not one day on a tablet, not one day on this print, on that print. Have one metin. On your phone or whatever it is, have one metin. Okay? Some of the different Quran teachers, they would tell us as well. Okay? They would say, when you're memorizing the Quran Kareem, you should have one mushaf. Not 2, not 3 or 4, just one mushaf that you read from all of the time. They would tell us this. The author, he says, لأن الرسم ينطبق في الذهن فرسم الأحرف وبدء الصفحة ونهاية الصفحة مع تكرر القراءة في نسختي نتيجة رسوخ ذلك في ذهنك حتى تسير كأنك تنظر فيها عند قراءتك لها. لكن إن اختلفت النسخ وبخاصة إذا اختلف ترتيب الأسطر والكلمات فإن هذا قد يؤخر حفظك وهذا الأمر مجرب في المصاحف. He says the reason why we say this is because script is different. The script is different in your mind. He says the letters, the beginning of the page, the end of the page, all of these things, when you continue to read and repeat, it makes a big difference. And it will be the night ta'ala, it will make it firm, it'll make it strong, it'll burn it into your memory, be the night ta'ala. He says, as for when there are different prints and there are different books, different letters, different lines, different colors, he says, then this could slow you down. This could what? This could slow you down. He says, and this is something which is mujarrab. This has been proven concerning the mushafs, the copy or the copies of the Quran al-Kareem. The Quran is written down into a book form. It's called the Mushaf, Mushaf Sharif. He says, فمثلا المصاحف الموجهة التي تنتهي فيها كل صفحة بآية إذا حفظ الإنسان عليها يختلف ذلك فيما لو أدخل مصحفا آخر في أثناء حفظه غير موجه وهذا مجرب فكلما كانت النسخة واحدة كلما كان الحفظ أرسخ وأثبت. The Shaykh, he goes on to elaborate this point by saying the different mushafs, how the pages are set, how the pages begin and end. He says this has an effect upon one's memory. Now, this point right here, or this technique, is considered to be something that's specific. It isn't a general piece of advice, but it's a specific technique for memory. Is that you should have one copy of what you're trying to memorize from. This is something considered to be a good point for a beginner. And it's also an advanced technique as well. Because this is going ahead now, all right? That you don't just look at the words or the information or you hear it, but you actually get into the actual technicalities of it, the specific book. No, I don't want that book, I want this book. I'm familiar with this one. Now, it may not seem like a big deal if you just want to memorize a sentence, okay? Or you want to memorize one hadith, but when you're memorizing every day in abundance over and over and over again, then no doubt every single small, tiny, technical thing helps you out and it assists you. And that's the mark of a professional. And that's what separates a beginner from an actual a student that's on his way to being intermediate. That actually makes the intermediate, it takes him to being an expert, someone who's good and being great. And of course, we have the great and then we have the elite. This is a difference. They're not the same. All right? A professional, you don't see it as a big deal, but a professional does. Okay, what's the big deal? Okay, big, so what? Or someone who's a connoisseur of something. Every small, tiny detail matters because he is a connoisseur. Everybody understand this? So in the tea culture, for example, people, they say, what's the big deal if you use a bag or tea leaves? What's the big deal if you use white sugar or brown sugar? What's the big deal if you use condensed milk or milk out of the refrigerator? What's the difference between a Lipton tea bag and, let's say, for example, an Ahmed tea bag? What's the difference? It's all the same as tea. That's the person who isn't a connoisseur, who doesn't have a fixed taste, an acquired taste, who doesn't know the different levels and grades, and how this one small ingredient can make a huge difference between honey being in the tea and between sugar being in the tea, between sugar being in the tea and no sugar whatsoever, between condensed milk and no condensed milk, between the milk being boiled first or the milk being cold or room temperature, etc. And the same applies to your studies. If you want to become a professional, a real student of knowledge, a great student of knowledge, an elite student of knowledge, then you need to take every single piece of information that you can and apply it as long as it is applicable. So therefore, once you've memorized something, it doesn't mean that you won't find it familiar if you read it in another book or even if you hear it. But when you're starting off and you're the beginning of memorizing it, use one copy. Now, some people don't necessarily have photogenic or, let's say, photographic memories or whatever you want to say. Photographic memories, some people memorize by hearing. All right? Whatever the case may be. There are different types of memory. And there are different types of memories or minds of memory. But you want to make sure, b'idhnillahi ta'ala, that you have one specific copy. And there are other benefits in this as well, such as the relationship that is found between the book and the owner of the book. There lies no doubt you have a book, you have a mushaf, okay, it gets old, it gets raggedy, it fades, you have your fingerprints on the page, your print marks, okay, you tape it, you stitch it back up, you put a cover on it, you have a relationship with the book. You've written notes in it, you've highlighted things. You don't want a new version that's stiff and brand new, all right? Or even a tablet. Okay, you can have a tablet, you can benefit from the tablet, you can love your tablet, but it's never ever going to replace the feeling that you get when you hold a book. And there's nothing like the intoxication of the smell of pages, especially old pages. You smell an old book from the library. It's not the same. Those old brown, orange type of pages that make noise every time you turn them. That's a feeling. That's a rush that you get from the book. And technology can never ever replace that. Let alone the fact if you have one specific book that you read all of these times. All right. We had different books when we were in the College of Hadith that we wrote notes in, and we walked with the book every day to school or to the Prophet's Masjid. You don't want another book. You want to keep the same book because you have a connection with it. And you also you're familiar with the specific copy, the print, the size of the font, etc. Khairan, inshallah. Before we move on to the next point, we should realize that the print that you make your main print to memorize the book from, it should be a good print of the book. All right? And that's a separate lecture in itself. It should be a print that's authentic. It should be a print that's been verified and checked by an expert. All right? It should be a print that isn't missing any information, that doesn't have additional information not from the author. Naam. And it should be a print that's clear. It should be a print that's not too small where you got to squint to read it. Okay? You're trying to read the March of Ants. No. Nor should it be a print that's too big in which it's an elephant parade. And it's just two big, bulky, jumbo letters in which one page only holds a few lines. And the book is made bigger and larger so it can be more expensive. We've seen this in Medina. They charge more money. They take a small matan and turn it into a big, thick volume with this big, long, exhaustive introduction, all of these tons of footnotes, and big, thick, fat, bold font to make the book bigger. You don't want that either. You want a perfect size. Not too big, not too little. And you want it to be clear for your eyes. Some people have bad eyes. Some people have strong eyes. Some people have glasses. Some people have to squint. You want what's good for you. You want what's good for you. Bidnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we said, every student of knowledge is different. What works for this sister may not work for that sister. What works for this brother in UK may not work for this brother in Australia. It's different. All right? Or this brother who comes from France, Algeria, or wherever you are, wherever you go. All right? So the print of the book should be a good print. And if you don't know how to get a good print, or even as a beginner, you should seek the guidance from your teacher or from your mentor, or for an older brother or an older sister, or someone who has studied and someone who has been in ta'ala has been proven, has been proven to be someone of knowledge, a student of knowledge, a scholar, whatever the case may be. So that's another lecture, as we said, is the exact way of finding a good print and a good matan. And the same applies to the Mus'haf al-Sharif. The Mus'haf al-Sharif should be a good print, all right? Whether it's the print that comes from the King Fahd Quran complex, all right? Or those that come from other printing presses and factories. Make sure it's authentic, all right? All right? Tayyib, this is very important here, all right? And we know the different missionaries and the non-Muslims, they print the Quran as well. And they put things inside and take things out. And we've heard the stories when we were in Yemen, all right, of the different mushafs that they had in circulation that came from the non-Muslims that were trying to convert the Muslims to Christianity or get them to doubt their deen, وَلِيَذُ بِاللَّهِ. طيب. The author, he then says, point 7, شكل المتن الذي تحفظه تشكيلا لغويا. The 7th point is to make sure that you have all of the correct diacritical marks. All of the vowel sounds, make sure that they're written and correctly and properly in your print. Make sure that you have the vowels, as the brothers, they say, I can read, but I can't read with the vowels. Or I know how to read, but I don't know how to read without the vowels. Or those who say, I can't read, I'm just memorizing. Make sure that you have all of the vowels. And make sure, bidnillah ta'ala, that the vowels are there in general, let alone that which may be problematic. It seems easy now, it seems simple now, but as you get older, as you grow older, your eyes may become weaker, or as you're teaching, it may not become that simple, and it may not become easy. And that's why many of the ulama of hadith, they would say, shakil al-mushkil. They would say, shakil al-mushkil. They would say, put the vowel on that which is problematic. So the author says is to make sure you put all of the tashkil, the tashkilat, make sure that they're placed there. Now, that's a long discussion with regards to when you start off as a beginner and then you actually learn grammar. all right, and you can read without the vowels, you take off the training wheels. What's important is even if you know the grammar and you don't necessarily need the training wheels, it doesn't necessarily mean that it shouldn't be there, because there are certain things which you may be a fatha, but it may be a kasra. Inshallah ta'ala bidinillah, we're going to stop here for this lesson today. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to allow us to implement and to practice what we've heard, what we've read. And my advice is that every point that we mention from the author, if it's practical, then make sure you're practicing it. After you hear the lesson on the channel, don't just say it's a good lecture, but put it into play. Try it out. Write it down. Make a diary. Make for yourself a 7-day trial period. See if it works. And then, bid'inillah ta'ala, you can summarize the speech. You can add things. And you can, bid'inillah ta'ala, allow it to continue for others. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to give us the success in this life and hereafter.